We appreciate your time. Second in the series of webinars that EITS is putting on. Today we're going to talk about the about the ACC tab. Just to get started here and make sure everybody understands where the chat window is. If you know what the acronym ACC stands for, go ahead and chat that out to everybody. I had to look it up myself this morning. So what we're going to be doing, we're going to turn it over. Well, let me back up. So this webinar series is the first Friday of every month at 9 a.m. Next one scheduled for Friday, May 4th, where best practice settings are going to be reviewed. Patches, auto updates, logging, role-based access. So that's going to be, again, Friday, May 4th. This morning, we're going to be turning this over to Eric Rosen, who's going to walk through the ACC tab. We're probably about 30 to 40 minutes. After Eric finishes, we can have an open Q&A session. By all means, if you have questions throughout the presentation, just chat them. We've got a few different people that are watching the chat window. So it's interesting, you know, as we go out and visit our clients, you know, we think we're out there promoting best practices. I would just say this week we had a customer for the last couple of years. We started walking through the ACC tab and they hadn't even been in it yet. So I venture to say we have all levels of people on the phone. So no question is a bad question. Just let us know. The ACC tab is going to be a tool that provides you the actionable intelligence about what's going and moving and traversing across your network, right? It's going to depict it graphically, and it's going to give you a way to interact with that. So Eric's going to go through, you know, he's going to be talking about network activity, the threat tab, the block tab, the tunnel. And he's going to drill down in, show you some best practices of things you should be looking at on a regular basis. So having said that, Eric, I'm going to stop sharing, and okay. It's all yours.
Yep.
You should be able to just take it.
All right. Everyone see my screen? Is that okay?
Yeah. Yes, looks good.
Okay, great. All right, so yeah, like Rodney said, right, today we're going to kind of go over the ACC tab, kind of how I use it, how I talk to customers about it, how EITS talk to customers about it. I'm going to try to keep it within 30 minutes. There's a lot of information here. So just to kind of highlight again what we're going to do, first we're just going to talk about kind of navigating this, what we're looking for here. Second, we're going to kind of we're going to use the filters. The global filter is your friend, right? Once you learn how to use the global filter in ACC, it becomes a very powerful tool, right? So we're gonna do a couple of examples with the global filter, and then at the end we're gonna kind of talk about how you can customize some tabs to build your own kind of views, right? And so that's kind of how we're gonna run through this morning. So I'm just gonna start real quickly. So I'm in Panorama right now, right? So Panorama, again, is the manager of multiple different firewalls. ACC works with individual firewalls or in Panorama. In this case, right, I've got a device group where I'm rolling up a bunch of different devices into Panorama, and that's what I'm kind of viewing in the ACC tab, right? Now, I could also pick a specific firewall and move into that, and I'll just see its view, right, within a specific period of time. But we're just kind of going broadly here. And one thing to kind of think about when you start to look at data in this tab is everything is done by a time period, right? So we have filters here. We can pick how long we want to look at data. We can build custom filters, right? But the idea is that you're going to pick the time you want to look at the data, and then we're going to start moving into it, right? And so everything we see in the ACC tab actually is in the monitor tab as well. Right, so what we're basically just doing is graphically representing log data, right? And so kind of to show you that point, right? So if I were, for example, to look at some source IP activity here, there's a couple little boxes that we have here. One of them is jump to logs, right? So anything I'm kind of doing and looking at in ACC as we start to drill down into this data, we can move over to logs right from there, right? And so it's going to build a little filter for us, and we're going to move right into log data. So that could be handy. Another thing that is interesting, right? So if we look at the application usage little box here, right? What we're doing is within this 1 hour period, we're looking at basically all the applications that we've categorized that are moving across all the firewalls that are reporting back to Panorama, right? And so kind of by top talkers, we see the major applications moving through the network, right? And so if we're interested in more data about, or for example, say I didn't know what rapid share was, right? There's this little icon, I can pull it down. And here I can see actually what that application is, right? So this is linked right back into our Applepedia, right? So everything that we have here that we classify as an Applepedia, you can look at that, and then you can actually control things based on that. And so the other thing when we pull down is the global find, and global find is going to kind of tell us really quickly, and we can do this with all this data, right? Is where am I using, for example, in this one, this application, rapid share, right? And it's in an object group. So, and it might be in a rule set as well. So it's a quick way to kind of drill down and look at information and see where it is, right? And so in an example like this, I wanted to block rapid share or remove it from this object group, I could very quickly. It just helps me kind of move around. Other things that are interesting here, we can, again, by top talkers, we see the top 10 applications that are moving through all these networks in the past hour, but there's a lot of other ones as well, right? And so in all these boxes, you're going to see this other little icon with the arrow, and that's going to allow you to maximize that view, right? And so what this is going to pull up is basically all those applications, right? So more than just the top 10, we see all the applications here, right? So we see things like mega upload, Netflix, all that kind of stuff. This is a demo for a university network, so there's a lot of those file sharing type things in here, right? And then, so the other thing we can do is kind of export that view, right? So from here, we can export that as a CSV file. So if, for example, you have teams that want to track that data or looking for specific users, when we start looking at users or IPs, we can export that to a CSV. We can also take this whole view as we kind of build it and build a PDF that we could present as well. So you'll see that here, right? So it's going to take a little bit to run, but it's another way to present this data in a graphical format as compared to that CSV type file. And it's downloading it here, and then we can see this, right? So this might be good information to share with people within the organization once you start to build your views. And I have a custom view here that we'll look at later, and you could, again, once you've built that, you can move it out. And we talked about jumping to logs, and then the other way is there's an export button here. Also, we can look at all this data, right? There's these little radio buttons here. We can look at this data by bytes, by session, by threats, right? So there's other ways to look at this data, and you can do that individually, right, within all of these different tabs. And then also there's different graphing options for some of this data as well, right? The one thing about the ACC tab is everything is dynamic within here as well. So if, for example, I wanted to move this and just look at rapid share, this is a local filter. This is what we call a local filter. So now we're just filtering this locally, right? The other way to do this is a global filter, and we'll talk about this a little later, but you could promote this to a global filter. And then everything we're looking at in ACC, from user activity, from IP activity, it's all based on that global filter, right? So we're only looking at users and threats associated with that application. So I'm going to clear that out. All right, so we have these local things like application, user activity, right? We can also kind of go in here, and if you left click, you can pick a really specific time period, and that's going to create another kind of local filter for you. We can also take that specific filter we just created again, and we can move it to the global filter, right? And then that was a time period one. So at this point, I'm looking at everything in that quick period of time. that we defined. So in this first tab, the network activity things I look for, right? So things that are interesting is, again, application usage, right? So this is all the applications in my network over this period of time, the users in my network, who's doing what from a data transfer perspective, a session perspective, a threat perspective, right? So, and we'll do that. We'll go into a little deeper depth there in a little while. Source IP activity. Are there specific machines in my network that are moving a lot of data, right? So within this hour period, we have 3 machines that are moving a lot of data, right? That might be interesting. Are they moving all that data to a specific IP or more than one IP, right? Where's the data coming from? Where's it going, right? So sometimes this is information that's important, right? And we can also filter down. This is an example, right? If we take China, I've created this local filter for China. I can move this over to the global filter. And at this point, really everything I'm looking for from an application perspective, from a user activity perspective, source IPs, destination IPs, it's all related to activity talking with China, right, as a destination. And then another interesting rule here, or another interesting view, is the rule usage tab. So here is what rules are actually triggering for data, right? So, you know, which rules are generating the most traffic and information. This can be helpful. Maybe if you have an allow all rule that you didn't expect to do your policy, you might see that here. And you might see that most of your data is moving through that rule, right? Where that might have been unexpected. So that's kind of the overview of the network activity tab, right? It's a good way to kind of look at your network from a graphical perspective instead of just a log perspective. Then we're going to move over to the threat tab here. So the threat tab is basically all the threat activity, you know, that we do from a security perspective, right? So we're going to see our traditional IPS IDS stuff, wildfire activity, malicious URL activity. Because we're an application firewall all the time, we're going to see applications that are running over ports that we don't expect. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And then we have this section that was introduced in, I think, 7.1. This is compromised host. And so this is kind of an aggregation of, you know, maybe I see a host that's doing command and control, but I also saw threats associated with them earlier, or they're reaching out to several different command and controls, or they were part of an exploit kit, right? That is this compromised host section. So when I talk, when Rodney and I go into customers, we like to make sure they understand what the compromised host section is, because this is a quick way to kind of filter down data, right? So in this case, I've moved to a 7-day time period, and I see a couple of users. I have one user here, Marsha Worth, and the severity is critical, right? And so what that means is we have a pretty high, there's a pretty high likelihood that this user is compromised, right? And so if we want to look and see, you know, why we feel that way, we can go into this match count activity over here, right? And so you can see match information, and then we can see the actual evidence for why we feel like this host is compromised, right? And so there's going to be multiple detections here. So compromised host section. When we talk to people about ACC tab, we understand that everyone has different jobs and they do a lot of things on a daily basis. It's probably good practice that someone on your team is looking at this data on at least a weekly basis, right? So the same way we talk about folks building, you know, a weekly report to kind of consolidate the information and look at that on a weekly basis, we would recommend the same here at least for someone to come into the ACC tab and kind of move through this data. Right? So on the threat, just to go through threat really quickly, right? So,
hey Aaron, real quick,
yeah.
before we move into threat, we got a good question here that came back.
Okay.
If you were asked to pull, and I think this is a good common use case, if you were asked to pull an internet browsing report for a user, what's the best way to filter that data?
The best way to filter data for internet browsing is actually to go to the Monitor tab and go down to User Activity Report. This is the most concise way to do this, right? And we're actually going to build here a report for a specific user. We can look for some user activity here in ACC tab, but it's not going to be the detailed activity from a browsing perspective that you're going to need to send to someone like legal. Thanks, Leo. Any other questions before I continue?
That's it for now.
Okay, cool. So within the threat activity tab, right? So, we classify threats by ID. So if you're looking at some of these, and again, if you don't know what they are, we know, let's say we have this FTP brute force attempt. Well, that's interesting, but what is that, right? So again, we're going to see this here, right? So really good, quick contextual data. From here, we can also add an exception. So, right, if we have a security profile and we just don't want to see this alert anymore, right? We can build an exception. Also, we are linked into what we call autofocus, which is the front end to our Wildfire cloud. And what this is going to do is it's basically to go out to the Wildfire cloud, and it's gonna pull data from autofocus just for information related to in this case SCP login brute force attempt. Right. So that's kind of the threat tab, compromised host. Next section is Wildfire Activity. So this is our event sandboxing technology. You can kind of see here from where we're seeing wildfire activity in the network. Are they associated with specific IPs, that kind of thing. And then going down a little bit. So, Leo, you had a question earlier about users and web browsing activity. We do see a little of that here, right, in the threat section, but this is more related to specific users or specific IPs going out to malicious domains, right? And this is good information. So in this case, these are probably associated with malware, right? Command and control callouts or that kind of thing. And then since I did a lot of firewalling in the past, and so I come to security from a networking background, I'm always really interested in applications using non-standard ports, right? So when we talk about our firewalls and moving from the left being like a layer 4 firewall, we're not doing any sort of real prevention. We might be doing some alerting to the right being kind of best practice for us. Part of that is application level whitelisting, right? And so then we're saying these are the applications that are important to your environment. Let's allow these and let's stop everything else, right? Well, along with that, we want to make sure that actually DNS is DNS and it's running on the port it's supposed to. So if we look at this example, we have DNS running on port 32775, right? And so that may be typical in your environment. You may understand what that is, or that might be someone trying to tunnel data out of your network. So applications using non-standard ports is a good way to kind of look at that, right? The other tab that's interesting, and a lot of users don't use this, and I recommend you might want to do this on a weekly basis, is the block activity tab. And what's important about the block activity tab is it's going to kind of show you what's already getting blocked. And from a threat perspective, right? We were at a customer a couple of months ago. They had some crypto malware on a machine. It was trying to reach out to command and control. We were blocking it on the firewall in the network, right? So it couldn't reach out and couldn't encrypt that machine. But the admins didn't know, the user didn't know, but it was here, right? And so we found that here. We went and found that user, and they fixed that machine before it left the network, was able to get to command and control and basically get encrypted, right? And so it's just a good place to go to kind of see what's going on, because not only, we want to definitely see what's allowed, but we want to see what's blocked as well, because another example here, someone's trying to move raw files through the network, right? And so that's probably not good. So again, it's just this visibility we can see this, right? New in 8.0 is the ability to look in GRE tunnels, right? So as we grow as a company, we're adding features here. So, you know, it's GRE tunnels now. It's going to be other types of tunneling protocols moving forward. But, you know, in this example, this tab is looking at tunnel activity inside GRE. And we can see within this 7-day period, this is the traffic that has moved through that GRE tunnel. So at a high level, that's kind of what the ACC tab is, kind of how to move around in it, what the buttons do. I'm going to go into a couple specific use cases, right? And so I was playing with this morning, and I was thinking about some of the use cases that I wanted to show you today. And one use case came to me that I hadn't really thought about before. I'll move it down to a 1-hour period. But I always talk with customers about this, and that's visibility into the remote access tools that are moving through your network, right? So I just used the application usage tab. I drew down into the subcategory of application or remote access, right? And so I'm looking at the local filter now, but then I'm going to promote it to the global filter. And I could also just go over here to the plus sign and pick a specific application, right, if I wanted to do it that way as well. But now, within the last hour, I'm looking at all of the applications, the remote desktop type applications that are running in my network. And this is a common way because a lot of customers don't lock this down after a compromise happens, or a way to maintain control or move around in the network is through, you know, these external remote access control type solutions, things like, you know, also things like SSH. And so, you know, just real quick, I've drilled down and into all remote access within my environment within a 1-hour period. We can move this around however we want. We can see all the users that are using remote access tools, how much is moving through my network, what are the source and destination activities associated with remote access tools, the countries it's coming to and going from. All right, so this is really good information. And basically what rule in my firewall is actually allowed this to happen in the first place, right? And so really quickly, I can see this is happening. I might want to write a rule to block this, and I would want to know where that's being allowed so far. And so it's all here, right? Again, threat activity associated with this would also be here, right? And this is interesting. So, you know, now that we're looking at all remote access applications, all these threats are associated with attacks against remote access applications. So you can see we're drilling down into the specific information. It's really good. It's pretty neat, right? So no malicious URLs, no wildfire activity associated with it, but definitely threats for those that would be externally facing. So that's one rule case. And so I'm going to go ahead and clear that out from the global filter. Another one that's interesting, so I'm going to move this to a 24-hour period. We're going to do it by top talker within my network. So within the last 24 hours, I have a lab desktop here that's moving 127 gigs of data, right? So I want to know more about that, right? So I'm going to go to this global filter again. I'm going to add that host. Now I can see everyone that host is talking with. So things to kind of look for here, right? If I've got a lab desktop and it's talking with 1 or 2 machines and it's sending all that data out, that might be interesting activity, especially where is that data going from a country perspective. Also, we can see these associated applications with that desktop and then the user associated with this desktop. And in this example, if we go to the threat activity tab, we're also going to see that we feel like this machine has been compromised and it's doing beaconing activity. And we can see, you know, WordPress brute force attempts, command and control associated with WireLurker, if we want to know what that is. We have that here, right? But this is good information. And in this case, this machine is probably compromised, and we're going to want to take it off the network or at least review it, right? one more example, and then I'm going to move on to basically customize tabs and then open it up for questions. So the last example is doing this by user. So if there's specific users in your network, or you're just interested in the activity of folks because you've been asked maybe by the security team, or you are the security team and you're interested, we can do that here, right? And so, we can take a user like Marsha, who we saw before is already compromised. We can move her up in this case. We can do the Marsha joke. But really, again, in that 7-day period, we see all the activity associated with the user, the machines. So in this case, she's been on 3 different machines, right? One of those being the lab desktop, all the destination activity, source destination, threat activity, right? So again, at a high level, moving around in ACC, it's really all about understanding how to use the global filter to get the information that you need out of ACC, and then, what am I going to do with it at that point? Am I going to export it to a CSV file? Am I going to export it to a PDF? Am I going to move over to the logs with that data, right? That's really how you kind of leverage this tool. So I would say it's not only for the network team, it's the security teams. There's a lot of good information in here as well. It's represented differently than a SIM would be in most cases, right? So if you have security folks and they have a little time where you want to show this to them, I also recommend that the security team kind of learn how to use this, because there is good hunting information in here as well. Before I move over to the customized tabs, any other questions? Okay. So here I've built a custom tab called High Security, right? And so in this case, right, what we're basically doing is picking, things we want to see. Either we maybe want to see some application usage, some applications using non-standard ports, some source zones that data is coming from, and maybe we call this test. And the key here is, once we've kind of built this out, we want to set the specific filters we need for it. So just like the global filters that are over here on the left, right? So we can pick our filters here. So maybe we want to say anything sourced from a specific user, or in this case, we'll just pick a zone. And now we've built a customized tab, right? Specific to data from that AWS VPN zone. We can move these around to make them look differently. Right? So now I've made my tabs look differently, but the idea here is, and then what I've done with this high security tab is really, we consider, and maybe as an example, this AWS VPN to be high security. We want to look at these logs in a different way. We want to make sure that someone's coming in here every day, maybe looking for threat activity and block threats for data moving from AWS maybe to my DC, right? If I've kind of built a hybrid connection, or maybe have a direct connect link. So this is customizable, and it's per user as we log in here, right? So you can build this on a per user basis. But it might be valuable to you and your organization. And so it looks like I did that in less than 30 minutes. So if anybody has any questions, we can open it up for questions now.
And if anyone has any questions, you can go ahead and send those over in the chat window. One thing I would add is, we get a lot of customers where we may go in and maybe there was some turnover, some people that are coming in, not necessarily as much background on the Palo platform. And, often we're asked, how do I know what this thing's really doing? How do I know that it's stopping things? How can I show my management the power of what's going on with this device? And Eric showed this through the presentation, but everything he went through, this is all data you could export. So I don't know, Eric, are there any common reports that you could think of if you kind of put your CISO hat on, or maybe even the business side, that you could envision customers coming in here and maybe producing some reports on a monthly or a quarterly basis that they send back to their management, some of the more common ones?
Yeah, so from a monitoring perspective, a lot of those monthly reports that we're going to build that are going to kind of be auto-generated and sent to a group of users, we're going to do that in the PDF report section, right? And so just a good one to start with, really there's a PDF summary report that's pretty good, right? And that PDF summary report is going to have, your top talkers, victims, top threats, high-risk URL categories, top applications in your network. This is all just good visibility information, right? We can definitely build customer reports, but a really good way to just start is with the PDF summary report, right? And so you're going to basically build this report, you're going to give it a name, and you're going to send it to a group of users, right? And so, to your point, right? So security team is going to want different information than your higher level folks, right? So for security, maybe network teams, the PDF summary is a good report. The SaaS application usage report for maybe some of your high level folks is a different way to kind of do this data. And I have a sample one over here. You can kind of see if I can find it. There we go. This is and so this is more graphical representation of that same data. In your network, it's going to kind of show you the SaaS applications you use in your environment, who's using them, how much data is being transferred, all that kind of stuff. So the SaaS application report can also be built basically to run on a monthly basis or whatever we want to do. We also have, again, at a higher level, we have basically what we call SLR reports, right, which your customers can generate. Those we would do through the support portal, and I think we'll cover that in another session, right? But the idea here is that this is your higher level reports for your executive level staff to kind of give them an idea of what's happening in the network. With a chat.
Great, good stuff. Another question we got was how to give specific people or maybe a group like your SOC access to the ACC and reports without giving them full access to the entire firewall?
Yeah, good. That's a really good question. That's going to happen in basically administrator roles. So we're going to basically build, and this is, I don't have full access to this device. Let me see if I can do this. The idea here is we basically can set up role-based access control. Let's see if I can get to one that I have access to. 1 second. So also from Panorama, right? So what I'm doing now is I'm moving to a specific firewall that's managed by Panorama. I'm going to see if I have access here in this demo pool. But the idea is, again, we can definitely do that. You're going to do that in the device section under basically admin roles, and we're going to define. Yeah, I don't have access to this one, but you're going to go in here and you're going to build a role, and there's some pre-canned roles for folks like threat researchers, but you can also build customized roles, and then you're going to use basically you're going to attach users through, if you're doing it locally, through administrators or something like Radius or LDAP to map users to specific roles. So. Great.
Another question we had come up here, Eric. Can the rule usage report be filtered to find unused or rarely used rules?
Not in the rule usage report. So unused rules, and this is it. So in 8.1, which is brand new code, so we're not going to recommend anyone run it unless they absolutely need to right now. But in 8.1, we do show from a policy perspective when a rule was last hit. Right, and so that information is all there if it's ever been hit, and we can export that data there. Yeah. Are there questions? Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, Leo. Anything else? Okay, well, what I'd say to everyone, and we answered the question, yes, our full intent is to make these webinars available to you. We will send out links to them. And I'd just say overall, we're doing these things to help you improve your hands-on, your security posture. You know, give us the feedback. What else do you want to see? What else would be a beneficial use of your time? But just mark your calendars right now, first Friday of every month at this time, and we'll be doing something. Thank you, everyone. We know your time is valuable, and we appreciate you giving us 45 minutes here this morning.
Yes, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it today.
Great job, Eric. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you.